The rattlesnake struck before Dorothea Fiske had both boots clear of the stage step. The young stable hand beside the watering trough never saw it. He was 16 at most, all elbows and dust, reaching for a dropped lead rope while the snake lay coiled in the narrow shadow beneath the trough rail. Dorothea saw the lifted head, saw the boy's heel come down less than a foot away, saw there was no time to shout him backward without sending him onto it. Her revolver cleared leather. One shot cracked through the Silver City livery yard. The snake snapped against the dirt and went still. The boy froze with the lead rope in one hand. A horse slammed against a hitch rail. Someone cursed inside the stable. Then a man's voice cut through the confusion. "Don't move." Dorothea had already lowered her muzzle. She turned only her eyes. The man crossing the yard wore a sheriff's badge and a dark coat powdered at the hem with road dust. His revolver was out, but not wavering. He had drawn toward the sound and found a woman beside an arriving stage, smoke fading from her barrel, one frightened stable hand 3 paces away. Not an unreasonable picture to dislike. Dorothea kept her weapon pointed at the ground. "The boy should stay still," she said. The sheriff's gaze flicked to him. "Why?" "Snake." The stable hand finally looked down, his face drained pale. The rattlesnake lay near his boot, its body still twitching from the shot. "Lord," he whispered, "she saved me." The sheriff's attention returned to Dorothea. He did not holster yet, neither did she. For one suspended second, the yard seemed to wait on which of them would decide what the other was. He looked at the dead snake, then at the single mark in the dirt behind it. No wild second shot, no broken trough, no wounded horse. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. "Who taught you to shoot like that?" Dorothea met his eyes. "My mother. She taught me to measure before I fired, and never to aim at a man merely because he aimed first." The sheriff lowered his gun. First. Then he holstered it. Dorothea did the same. A man near the stable door laughed with the relief of someone who had not been in danger. "Well, Sheriff, looks like your bride arrived shooting." The sheriff turned his head. She arrived preventing a bite. The laughter stopped. Dorothea studied him more closely then. Marcus Teague looked enough like the man she had imagined from 11 letters to be unsettling, taller than she had pictured. Leaner through the face, brown hair overdue for cutting. The badge looked worn rather than ornamental. She had expected his handwriting before she expected his voice. She had not expected his first useful act to be correcting a stranger instead of explaining her to him. Marcus stepped closer, but stopped well outside arm's reach. "Dorothea Fiske, unless you have another correspondence bride arriving with a firearm today." One corner of his mouth moved. "Not that I was told." Good. Competition after 4 days of stage travel would be tiresome. His gaze dropped briefly to her revolver, then returned to her face. "I had hoped for a calmer introduction. You drew on me. After you fired a gun in my livery yard. Eventually counts." This time the almost smile lasted. "Fair." The stable hand finally moved, very slowly, away from the dead snake. Marcus glanced over. "You all right, Billy?" "Yes, sir." "Get inside and sit down before your legs decide for you." Billy obeyed without argument. Marcus looked back at Dorothea. "You were right not to wait." The sentence surprised her more than the gun had. Men had praised her shooting before. They admired speed, accuracy, the neatness of a difficult shot. Praise was easy when it cost them nothing. Being told she had been right to act before a man in authority gave permission was different. Dorothea did not reward him for saying what was true. "My trunk is on top." Marcus followed her glance to the stage luggage. "May I carry it?" She raised an eyebrow. You ask? I try to, before lifting things that belong to other people. Then yes. He climbed to the rear rack and lowered the trunk with more care than its scarred corners deserved. Dorothea took her valise herself. Marcus tested the trunk's weight. Books? Some. Tools? Some. Bricks? I left the bricks behind. Thoughtful. The stage driver snorted. Dorothea turned toward the boarding house direction Marcus had mentioned in his last letter. But movement across the yard caught her eye first. 2 freight men were unloading square wooden crates from a wagon backed near the hardware storage shed. One man wore a leather apron marked Sorrel in black paint. Another crate already sat on the ground beside him. Ammunition, if the stenciling along one edge meant what Dorothea thought it did. She slowed. Marcus noticed. What? Dorothea shifted the valise to her other hand. That crate. Sorrel's shipment. Ammunition. Some of it. She stepped no closer. The crate had been painted black at some point, but rough handling had scraped one corner back to grey pine. Across that exposed patch ran a dark, wavering line. Not fresh mud, not shadow, a tide mark in the wood. Dorothea had seen enough damp storage at her mother's bench to recognize what old water could leave behind. But a stained crate was not a verdict. Wood traveled through weather. Freight got splashed. A box could take water while its contents stayed protected. Or not. Marcus watched her watching it. You see something? Maybe. That sounds unhelpful. It is more honest than pretending certainty. She pointed with 2 fingers, not touching the crate. The wood took water at some point. See that line beneath the scraped paint? Marcus leaned slightly without abandoning the trunk. His expression lost its earlier humor. I see it. Doesn't tell us when. Doesn't tell us whether what was inside got wet. But you noticed. Yes. One of Sorrel's men glanced toward them, then went back to unloading. Dorothea looked at the remaining crates in the wagon, all painted dark enough to hide old discoloration, unless the surface broke. Her mother's voice came back with the same plainness it had carried at the bench. Notice first, conclude later. Marcus shifted the trunk higher against his leg. Mrs. Larkins is 2 streets over. Dorothea did not move yet. The snake lay dead behind her. The sheriff had lowered his gun. Ahead, men were carrying ammunition through a town that had no reason to question what was inside the boxes. She looked at Marcus. Does your office buy cartridges from him? Some of it, Marcus said. Dorothea kept her eyes on the sorrel crates. How much is some? Several boxes last month. He supplies half the ranches around here and most of the hardware trade on this side of town. That answer made the dark water line matter more, not less. Dorothea looked at the wagon again, then at Marcus. Do you know how your boxes were stored before you bought them? No. He did not defend the purchase. Should I? You should know whether anything unusual happened to them. That sounds different. It is. Marcus glanced once more toward the scraped grey pine. You're tired. I am capable of being tired and observant at the same time. I suspected as much. He lifted her trunk again. Mrs. Larkins first. Then, unless you object, I check the office stock tonight. Dorothea studied him. You noticed a question. I own part of the answer. That was enough to get her moving. Mrs. Larkins' boarding house stood 2 streets from the livery, a 2-story adobe building with a narrow shaded porch and clean lace curtains at the front windows. Mrs. Larkin herself had silver at her temples and the direct manner of a woman who had watched too many travelers make poor decisions after long roads. Room upstairs, she told Dorothea. Supper at 6. Water pitcher filled every morning. Firearms stay unloaded in the room unless you have reason otherwise. Dorothea nodded. Reasonable. Marcus set the trunk just inside the front room. I can carry it up if you want. Yes. Dorothea paid Mrs. Larkin for the room before Marcus could reach for his pocket. He noticed and said nothing. Upstairs, he carried the trunk to the door Mrs. Larkin indicated, set it down and remained in the hall. He did not step inside. Dorothea placed her valise on the bed and turned back. Marcus rested one hand on the trunk handle. There is another thing. That sounds promising. Probably not. His mouth flattened before he continued. You traveled a long way because of 11 letters and a question neither of us could answer on paper. That is one description of it. The travel does not obligate you to marry me. Dorothea went still. Marcus continued before she could misread him. If tomorrow you decide Silver City was a mistake, I will help you leave. If you want a week at Mrs. Larkin's before deciding anything, take it. If you want another town and can tell me where, I will help with that too. You would not ask why. I would probably ask. Probably. I am not claiming sainthood. A faint smile touched her mouth. And if I refuse to answer, then the refusal stands. Dorothea had expected practical awkwardness. She had expected questions about whether she cooked, whether she wanted children, whether she minded cattle dust. She had not expected him to make leaving easier on the same afternoon she arrived. Your letters did not say you were so determined to lose a bride. My letters said I wanted an honest arrangement. You used better handwriting. I had more time. From downstairs, Mrs. Larkin called that coffee was ready. Marcus glanced toward the stairs. Plain. Dorothea narrowed her eyes. What? Your coffee? Plain. You remembered? Letter 6. The fact landed with more weight than it deserved, or perhaps exactly as much as it deserved. 11 letters were not a marriage. They were not trust, but remembering how a woman drank coffee after 4 months of correspondence was evidence of attention, and Dorothea believed in accumulated evidence. She followed him downstairs. The next morning, 3 minutes before 7, Marcus arrived without flowers. Dorothea preferred the box in his hands. You checked the office stock, she said. 3 boxes from Sorrel's last delivery are still sealed. 1 was opened. I brought that one. Mrs. Larkin gave them the use of a small side table near the front window, on the condition that neither of them exploded anything before breakfast. Marcus accepted the rule. Dorothea sat, opened her valise, and removed a cloth-wrapped bundle. Marcus watched without touching. She unfolded the cloth and revealed a small brass shop gauge worn dull from years of use. My mother's, she said. She used it at the bench. Your father was a gunsmith. Repair work, mostly, cleaning, fitting, small jobs. When his hands became too uncertain for fine work, my mother kept the bench going. Marcus looked at the gauge, and you learned from her. After she decided I had earned the right to stop ruining her tools. Strict, exacting. Difference. A strict person wants obedience. An exacting one wants the work right. Marcus absorbed that. Your mother's still living? Dorothea's fingers rested briefly over the brass. No, she died several years ago. He did not offer a polished condolence. I'm sorry. Thank you. She unwrapped the cartridge box next. May I? Marcus asked, nodding toward the gauge. Dorothea turned it so he could see. You may hold it, he reached. Their fingertips touched over the brass. Briefly, neither hand lingered. Dorothea released first. Marcus examined the tool without pretending to know what he was seeing. What does it tell you? Fit, sometimes. Sometimes? It is a tool, not an oracle. Dorothea took it back and set it beside the open box. You begin with your eyes. She lifted the first cartridge. Brass case, ordinary enough. Second, similar. The third carried a faint greenish stain near the rim. Dorothea turned it beneath the window light. There. Marcus leaned closer. Corrosion. Beginning of it, yes. Fifth cartridge showed darker discoloration along one side. Several others looked cleaner. Dorothea did not touch the gauge yet. Same box, Marcus said. Mixed condition. Yes. Could storage here do that? Possible. Could freight? Possible. Could the whole thing be harmless? Possible. Marcus gave her a dry look. You enjoy that word. I enjoy not lying. She selected one sound-looking cartridge, checked it against the gauge, then compared one of the questionable rounds. The difference was slight enough that Marcus might not have noticed alone. Dorothea did not pretend the gauge answered where the damage happened. Would you fire these? He asked. Not the stained ones. The others? Dorothea looked at the box as a whole. Not yet. I would not trust the whole box until I knew how it was stored and whether the sealed boxes show the same condition. Marcus nodded once. Then I don't fire them. Dorothea looked up. That quick? You gave me a reason. I gave you uncertainty. Enough uncertainty to stop loading them into a deputy's belt. He gathered the box, but did not close it until she had moved her hands clear. I have older stock from another supplier. Known dry. I will pull the sorrel cartridges from use this morning and mark the sealed boxes separately. Without accusing him, without accusing anyone. Dorothea watched him lift the box, and after that, Marcus's expression hardened into purpose. After that, we find out what August Sorrel sold the rest of Silver City. By the time Dorothea reached the sheriff's office the next morning, Marcus had already done what he could control. 3 cartridge boxes stood open on the back table, a 4th still sealed. The suspect, sorrel rounds, had been separated onto folded cloth. One deputy wore an older cartridge belt instead of the newer issue Dorothea had seen the day before. Marcus was bent over a ledger, copying markings from the box ends. He looked up when she entered, mourning. Dorothea set her valise beside the wall. You did not wait for me. You told me what you would not fire. I believed you. The deputy at the table grinned. He also told me if I put one of those rounds back in my belt, Mrs. Fiske would make me explain myself. Dorothea removed her gloves. Fear has educational value. That is what I told him. Marcus closed the ledger. Dorothea glanced at the cartridges. You opened the sealed boxes? 2. Left one untouched in case the markings matter later. Good. He had also written the delivery date beside each box, the shelf where it had been stored, and which deputy had drawn from it. No accusation. No theory stretched beyond the paper. Just a record of what had been where. Dorothea unwrapped her mother's brass gauge, but left it beside the cloth until her eyes had done the first work. The condition remained mixed. Some cartridges looked ordinary. Others showed faint discoloration or greenish staining near the rim. One round seated differently in the gauge than the cleaner comparison round, but not enough to answer where the trouble began. Would you condemn all of them? Marcus asked. No. The deputy looked surprised. Dorothea turned the stained cartridge under the window light. I would condemn this one for use. I would hold the questionable boxes. That is different from saying every sorrel cartridge in Silver City is bad. Marcus nodded. That is what goes in the book. The deputy leaned against the table. People are already asking why we changed belts. What are you telling them? Dorothea asked. He looked toward Marcus. Sheriff said to tell them the office is checking supplies. Nothing about me. Nothing about Sorrel being guilty either, Marcus said. Dorothea approved of both omissions. Any packing left from the delivery. Marcus shook his head. Not much. Boxes came in wooden cases. The cartridges went onto shelves and into the storeroom. Boards get reused. For what? Feed bins, shelves, patches, firewood if somebody is lazy. The deputy added, half the ranches around here have somebody else's crate nailed onto something. Dorothea looked at the remaining sealed box. The crate at the livery had been only a question. If Sorrel's old packing had been scattered around town and ranches, one piece might hold more history than another. Or none at all. Marcus followed her reasoning. You still want to see Mesquite Bend? You promised. Afternoon, 8 miles or so. Do I get a horse? Unless you planned to walk. I like to know a man's intentions. I am learning that. They left the cartridges marked and separated. Marcus locked the office before they went. By early afternoon, Silver City had fallen behind them in a haze of pale dust. The October sun was warm without being punishing, and the road rolled through dry country, broken by scrub, low rises, and long stretches, where sound carried farther than seemed possible. Marcus had asked what kind of saddle Dorothea preferred before choosing the bay mare for her. That small question pleased her more than if he had announced the horse gentle enough for a lady. The mare was steady, responsive, and entirely uninterested in proving anything. Dorothea liked her. Marcus rode a dark gelding a few lengths ahead where the road narrowed, then fell back beside her when it widened. You ride well, he said. Well enough. That sounded cautious. I have met people who mistake staying in a saddle for mastery. You do not. I mistake it for staying in a saddle. Marcus smiled. Another lesson. You are accumulating them. Mesquite Bend appeared after roughly 8 miles, not as an empire, but as a working ranch that had survived because people repaired things before they failed completely. Corrals. A barn in need of paint. A low house set back from the road. Cattle beyond a fence line. One gate sagged enough to announce itself as future work. Dorothea took it in while Marcus dismounted. Disappointed, he asked. By what? The absence of marble columns. I was hoping for 3. We sold the 4th to pay for hay. She swung down from the bay mare, wasteful. A ranch hand crossing from the barn noticed them and called, "That the pistol bride." Marcus turned before Dorothea could answer. Her name is Dorothea Fiske. Use it if you need to speak to her. The hand's grin disappeared. Yes, Sheriff, Marcus did not lecture him. He took his gelding toward the hitch rail. Dorothea followed with the bay mare. Near the barn, a sorrel horse in a side pen jerked hard against its lead, then sidestepped with the whites of its eyes showing. One hand moved to catch the rope. Easy, girl. The mare jumped again. Dorothea heard a scrape, metal against wood. She lifted one hand. Do not pull her tighter. The hand stopped. Marcus looked toward the pen. What did you hear? That? The wind shifted. A loose iron hook tied into a short length of chain dragged against the post when the mare moved the rope. Scrape. Pause. Scrape again, Dorothea pointed. She is not fighting the rope. She is fighting that sound. Marcus stepped around the outside of the pen, removed the hook from where it caught the board, and let it hang free. The mare blew out a breath and stopped dancing. The ranch hand looked from the horse to Dorothea. You good with horses too? No. She brushed dust from her skirt. I am good at hearing metal scrape wood. Marcus hid a smile badly. The house was as modest inside as out. 2 mismatched chairs stood beside a scarred kitchen table. A wash basin in the back room carried a thin crack near the rim. Feed invoices were stacked beside a pencil stub, ordinary and unpaid, only because they were not yet due. Nothing about the place suggested hidden money or a life polished in expectation of a bride. Marcus showed her the rooms without turning the tour into an argument for marriage. Roof leaks near the back room if the rain comes hard from the west. Dorothea looked at him. Your letter said the roof was sound, mostly sound. That is not the same phrase. I feared you would notice. You feared correctly. He rubbed a thumb along his jaw. I can repair it before the winter rains. You can begin by admitting the roof leaks. This marriage may be difficult. You are not married yet. Encouraging. Near the rear of the house, the ground dropped farther than it first appeared where the packed earth met a rough threshold leading toward the barn. Marcus stepped down first, then held out his hand. He did not touch her. He offered. Dorothea looked at his palm, then placed hers in it. His grip was firm enough to steady and nothing more. Once both her boots were level, he released her immediately. The absence of an unnecessary second changed the touch more than lingering would have. Dorothea continued toward the barn before he could see that she had noticed. Tomorrow, Marcus said behind her. She stopped. What about it? Still your decision. He came alongside her, but left a respectful distance. If you want another week at Mrs. Larkin's, take it. If you want to leave, say so. If you want the marriage, we do it because you still want it after seeing this place. Dorothea glanced toward the crooked gate, the weathered barn, the ranch hand trying not to stare at her, and the house with its dishonest roof. Then she looked at Marcus. I came here to find out whether the man in those letters existed. His face gave away nothing easy, and held her gaze. Then tomorrow? Yes. He nodded once, no triumph, no reaching for her. That restraint made the answer settle more deeply. Dorothea turned toward the feed shed. One board low on the outer wall had been nailed across older siding as a patch. Most of it was painted black, but weather and use had exposed gray pine beneath. Near one end, burned freight mark survived under the paint. Across the grain ran a dark, wavering line. Dorothea stopped. Marcus followed her attention. What? She moved closer but did not touch the board. The waterline was older than the black paint. The burned mark looked familiar in the way partial things sometimes did. Not enough to claim, enough to remember the livery yard. Marcus came to stand beside her. You have seen that look before. Yesterday. The sorrel crate. Dorothea crouched without putting a finger on the wood. Maybe, there is part of a freight mark. Grey pine, old water staining under later paint. Marcus's expression tightened. You think this came from one of his shipments? Dorothea rose. I think it used to be part of a box. Marcus did not touch the board that afternoon. He crouched beside it, studied the old waterline beneath the black paint, then looked toward Dorothea. Leave it, until we know what we are doing with it. He rose, agreed. That choice carried into the next morning. Dorothea returned to Silver City, slept one more night at Mrs. Larkin's, and on day 4 married Marcus Teague. The ceremony was brief. No church full of strangers, no flowers tied to wagon rails, no crowd waiting to see whether the woman who had arrived shooting would become timid once vows were spoken. Before they entered the small room where the civil ceremony would be witnessed, Marcus stopped beside the doorway. Last chance. Dorothea glanced at him. You are becoming repetitive. I want to be certain repetition is not mistaken for pressure. That answer took some of the edge from her teasing. And if I say no, then we leave by the same door we came through. And Mrs. Larkin will probably charge me for wasting her morning. Dorothea looked toward the hall, then back at him. I am here because I chose to be. Marcus nodded once. So am I. They went in. The vows were lawful, simple, and over before Dorothea had time to become self-conscious about the fact that her name had changed. Mrs. Larkin served as one witness and gave Dorothea a look that was warmer than sentiment. Marcus did not kiss her for the benefit of anyone present. He did not claim her waist, pull her against him, or behave as though a civil authority had just granted him access to her body. When they stepped outside, Dorothea was the one who offered her hand. Marcus took it, warm palm, firm grip, brief. Then he released her and asked whether she wanted to return to the boarding house before moving her belongings. No, Dorothea said. If we are doing this, we might as well begin with the trunk. The bricks, too. I told you I left those behind. I remain disappointed. By noon, her trunk, valise, and smaller belongings had been transferred by wagon from Mrs. Larkin's boarding house to Mesquite Bend. Dorothea carried her own valise inside. Marcus carried the trunk after asking where she wanted it. He led her down the short hall and opened a bedroom door. Narrow bed, washstand, small chest, one window looking toward the south pasture. Nothing grand, everything clean. Yours, he said. Dorothea turned. And yours? Marcus pointed across the hall. There, his door stood open. Separate room, separate bed. She looked back toward him. You arranged this before I arrived. Yes. Why? He rested one hand against the doorframe and stayed outside her room. Because marriage settles one question. It does not settle every other one. Dorothea said nothing. Marcus continued, voice plain. You decide if this door stays open or closed. You decide if the lock is used. You decide if that changes later. Dorothea crossed the room and tested the lock. The key turned cleanly. Works. I checked it twice. You expected me to. I hoped you would. She came back toward the doorway. Marcus held out the house key. Dorothea reached for it. Their fingers met around the metal. Neither moved immediately. The contact lasted only a breath longer than necessary, but this time there was no accident in it. Dorothea felt the warm roughness of his fingertips against hers. Marcus did not close his hand. He waited. Dorothea took the key and stepped back. The brass gauge stays with me, I assumed. You were going to ask, eventually. Good. He gave a faint smile. You intend to make this difficult. Only the parts worth doing. They ate a plain lunch, then rode out toward the feed shed. The patched board remained exactly where they had left it. Marcus called over the ranch hand who had repaired that section. Where did this plank come from? The man frowned at it. Scrap pile. Before the scrap pile. He scratched his jaw. One of the freight crates, I think. Dorothea crouched beside the board but did not touch the surface. Which freight? Sorrel's wagon, maybe a month back. Ammunition and hardware. We broke down some of the boxes after unloading. Marcus asked, You are certain this piece came from one of those crates? Certain enough, I remember the black paint. Used 2 boards for the feed bin, too. The hand's face tightened. Was I not supposed to? You did nothing wrong, Marcus said. We are tracing where it came from. The man relaxed a little. Dorothea looked at Marcus. Now we can remove it. He fetched a claw hammer and narrow pry bar, without breaking it. That would be the idea. Marcus worked each nail loose with patience rather than strength. When one bent against the grain, he stopped and changed the angle instead of forcing it. Dorothea supported the far end only after he asked. Together, they lowered the plank to the ground. The reverse side answered more than the front had. Gray pine, old abrasions, a larger portion of the burned freight mark, and across the wood, darker and clearer, from this side a deep, irregular tide line. Black paint had been applied later, over part of the staining. Marcus crouched, so it was wet before it was painted. That is what the wood suggests. And before it became part of this shed, yes. He pointed toward the burned mark without touching it. Sorrel. The ranch hand tied the crate to his delivery. The mark supports that. Enough to say his ammunition was damaged? Dorothea shook her head. No. Marcus accepted the answer immediately. Enough to say the crate had taken water? Earlier, yes, and enough to keep asking. Definitely, they carried the plank into the house and laid it flat across the kitchen table. Marcus resisted the temptation to scrape back more paint. Dorothea noticed. You want to. Very much. Do not, I know. The restraint mattered because curiosity could ruin as much evidence as anger. They left the board flat until morning. On day 5, Dorothea wrapped it in old canvas herself. Marcus brought the wagon around. They loaded it flat so it would not flex against the sideboards. The trip back to Silver City took longer by wagon than horseback, and neither tried to fill the road with unnecessary talk. Once at the sheriff's office, Marcus took one end of the wrapped plank and Dorothea the other. The deputy moved a chair aside before they entered. What is that? A board from a sorrel ammunition crate delivered to Mesquite Bend about a month ago, Marcus said. They unwrapped it on the back table. The deputy leaned in. That a watermark? Dorothea answered. Looks like one, older than the paint. Marcus looked at the deputy. Nobody scrapes it, oils it, cleans it, burns it, or stacks anything against it. Understood. Together, Marcus and Dorothea moved the unique lid behind his desk, upright against a dry interior wall where boots would not catch it, and stove heat would not bake it. Dorothea kept hold until Marcus had wedged a small wooden block at the base to stop it slipping. Only then did she release it. The deputy waited until they were finished. Sorrel sent a man yesterday. Marcus turned. About the cartridges, said Mr. Sorrel heard the county pulled stock. Wanted to know why. Dorothea glanced toward the plank behind the desk. August had not seen it yet. He did not know what they had found at Mesquite Bend, but he already cared enough to ask why Marcus had stopped trusting the ammunition. Did his man say anything else? Marcus asked. Only that a sheriff questioning a merchant's goods becomes everybody's business. Marcus removed his gloves and laid them on the desk. He is not wrong about that. Dorothea watched his face. What are you going to tell him? Marcus looked once toward the old waterline beneath the black paint. Only what we know. The deputy shifted near the door. And if that is not enough for him? Marcus's expression hardened, not with anger but purpose. Then, I suppose, August Sorrel is going to have to ask better questions. For 2 days after the grey pine lid reached the sheriff's office, nothing failed. That did not make Dorothea trust the cartridges any more. It only gave Silver City time to notice that Marcus's deputies had changed belts, and that Sorrel's county stock sat marked and separate, instead of riding on men who might have to fire without warning. By day 8, merchants had begun asking questions. One wanted to know whether the sheriff had stopped buying from August Sorrel. Another had heard that Marcus's new wife could tell good ammunition from bad by holding it to the light. Dorothea disliked that version because it made skill sound like magic. Marcus disliked it because someone had attached her name to a claim she had never made. They kept their answers plain. Some of the county stock showed corrosion. It was being checked. Nothing more. Then Hensley walked into the office with his right hand wrapped in clean linen and an old saddlebag under his left arm. Marcus stood at once. What happened? Hensley set the bag on the desk. Doctor says I'll keep the hand. Dorothea moved closer but did not reach for the bandage. Burn? Cartridge went wrong yesterday. Marcus's face hardened. Where? My place. I was checking a revolver before riding fence. Bought the cartridges where? Sorrel. Hensley looked from Marcus to Dorothea. 9 days ago. Dorothea felt the room narrow around the answer. Did you bring what was left? Hensley opened the saddlebag and removed a cartridge box, then the revolver. The cylinder would not turn freely. Black residue marked one chamber. Dorothea did not pick it up. May I examine the box? That's why I came. She took the cartridges to the back table and spread a clean cloth beneath them. Her mother's brass gauge came from the wrapped bundle in her valise and went beside the box. Hensley watched her hands. You really can tell what happened? No. The answer surprised him. Then what can you tell? Condition. Sometimes enough to tell you what not to trust. Dorothea opened the box. Several rounds looked ordinary. One carried faint green staining near the rim. Another had a dark, irregular patch along the brass. She turned each beneath the window light before touching the gauge. How did you store these after buying them? Tack room shelf. Dry as anything on the place. Roof leak? Not over that shelf. Did the box travel anywhere else? No. Dorothea checked one cleaner round against the gauge, then a questionable one. Same kind of mixed condition we saw in the county stock. Marcus asked. Same cause? I cannot say that. Hensley glanced at his wrapped hand. Whatever the cause, it nearly cost me this. That was harder to dismiss than speculation. Marcus turned to him. You still have the receipt? Hensley produced a folded paper from inside his coat. Marcus read the date and merchant name, copied the information into his notebook, then handed the original back. Keep that. You want the revolver, if you are willing to leave it. I'll have the gunsmith inspect it and return it to you. Hensley nodded. Fine. Dorothea closed the cartridge box. Leave these too. Gladly. Do not use any more from the same purchase until we know what we are dealing with. Hensley flexed the fingers of his injured hand and stopped when the movement hurt. You don't need to convince me. When he left, Marcus marked Hensley's cartridge box and placed it apart from the county stock. The damaged revolver remained on his desk, long enough for him to write a note to the gunsmith, then went out with a deputy for inspection. The cartridge box stayed. Dorothea's gauge remained on the clean cloth where she had used it. Marcus looked at the marked box, then toward the grey pine lid behind his desk. County stock and Hensley's purchase. Two separate sources showing similar condition. Enough to warn everyone, Dorothea considered. Enough to make the questions harder. August should hear those questions from me. He did not have to wait long. Sorrel arrived that afternoon wearing a dark brown coat, too clean for freight work, and boots, polished bright enough to reflect the office doorway. Behind him stood the same young clerk Dorothea had seen at his store once before, carrying inventory slips tied with string. August removed his hat. Sheriff. His gaze moved to Dorothea. Mrs. Teague. Then it traveled across the room. The opened work cloth, Hensley's marked box, Dorothea's brass gauge lying in plain view, the grey pine crate lid behind Marcus's desk. He noticed all of it. Only the lid changed his face. Barely. A pause in the movement of his eyes, then gone. Marcus saw it too. You wanted to know why county cartridges were pulled, he said. August rested his hat against one thigh. I wanted to know why my merchandise is being treated as guilty before anyone has proved a thing. Some of your stock shows corrosion. Hensley had a cartridge failure yesterday. August glanced at the marked box. Stored where? His tack room. Before that, your store, Marcus said. August spread one hand, and before my store, freight changes hands. Wagons take rain, men leave boxes where they should not. None of that makes me responsible for every careless roof in Grant County. Dorothea said. No one said it did. August turned toward her. Then we agree there are other explanations. There are. Relief flickered through his expression. Dorothea continued. That does not make any one of them true. His mouth tightened. He glanced at the gauge on her cloth. And that little instrument tells you where the damage happened. No, whether it happened before I sold anything. No, whether every cartridge in a box is unsafe. No, August's confidence returned. Then this is becoming an expensive collection of maybes. A burned hand is not a maybe, Marcus said. The clerk behind August shifted his weight. Dorothea looked toward the inventory slips. Did you handle the county delivery? The clerk lifted his eyes. Some of the back stock, ma'am, he keeps paper. August cut in. Dorothea did not look away from the clerk. Did you handle that shipment? The young man opened his mouth again. August turned sharply. You are not needed for this. The clerk's face closed. Yes, sir. Take those back. He left with the slips. Marcus watched the doorway after him. August pretended not to notice. I have a solution, he said. Replace every county box. Fresh stock, dry stock. No charge. Marcus folded his arms. And what do you want? A correction? To what? To the impression this office has created. August's voice stayed smooth, but less easily now. Say publicly that there is no evidence I knowingly sold damaged ammunition. That is true. Marcus glanced once toward Dorothea, then back to him. There is no evidence yet that you knew. Then say it. No. August stared at him. Why not? Because men will hear more than the sentence says. That is not my fault. It would be my responsibility if I gave them a sentence designed to sound like an acquittal. August's jaw tightened. Reputation keeps a business alive out here. So does merchandise people can trust. And rumor kills both. He looked at Dorothea. A woman arrives with a revolver, a brass tool, and opinions about a merchant's stock. People notice. Marcus stepped forward. Not far. Enough that anger entered the room before his body did anything foolish. Dorothea reached out and touched his sleeve just above the wrist. Intentional. Light. Marcus stopped at once. He did not catch her hand or turn the gesture into possession. August saw that too. Dorothea let go. You came here hoping one of us would become unreasonable, she said. August replaced his hat. I came here offering replacement stock, in exchange for reassurance. Marcus's voice had steadied. You do not get it. August looked toward the crate lid again. What is that board? Part of a sorrel ammunition crate delivered to Mesquite Bend about a month ago, Dorothea said. It shows old water exposure beneath later paint. August's thumb stopped against his hat brim, then moved again. Scrap wood gets wet. Yes, you cannot prove what was inside. No, or whether I knew anything about it. Not from that board. His eyes narrowed. Then you have very little. Marcus answered before Dorothea could. Enough to keep the suspect's stock out of use. August looked at him. You are making this town nervous. Then help me find out why it should not be. For the first time, August had no polished reply ready. He turned toward the door. Be careful, Sheriff. A man can damage more than ammunition by letting fear spread faster than facts. He left. Marcus stood beside the desk until the outer door closed. You handled him, he said. Dorothea glanced at the sleeve she had touched. He wanted anger. He almost got mine. Almost does not count. Marcus looked toward the doorway where the clerk had disappeared, then at the grey pine lid behind his desk. No, his voice lowered. But I want to know why August would not let that clerk answer a simple question. The question about Sorrel's clerk followed Marcus through the next morning, but he did not pretend suspicion was the same thing. As an answer, he sent one deputy to ask which men had handled the county delivery, and another to check older purchase records. Hensley's damaged revolver remained with the gunsmith. His marked cartridge box stayed separated in the sheriff's office, away from the county stock. The grey pine crate lid remained upright behind Marcus's desk. Dorothea's brass gauge stayed wrapped in its cloth until late afternoon. When the deputies finally left, and the office settled into the slower quiet of evening, Marcus closed the door after the last man stepped out. Then he turned to Dorothea. "Teach me." She glanced up from the notes she had been sorting. "Teach you what?" "What your mother taught you to notice. You have been watching. Watching is not the same as knowing what I am looking at." Dorothea studied him. Men had asked her to perform before. They liked difficult shots, quick hands, anything that could become a story by supper. Very few had asked to be corrected. Fewer still had asked before they knew whether correction would make them feel foolish. "All right," she said. Marcus reached toward the revolver at his hip. "Unload it." His hand stopped. Dorothea did not soften the instruction. Completely. Marcus nodded. He drew the single-action revolver and kept the muzzle turned safely away from both of them. Then he opened the loading gate. One chamber at a time, he rotated the cylinder and eased each cartridge free, setting them in a neat row on the clean cloth. Brass clicked softly against wood. When the last round was down, he rotated the cylinder again and checked every chamber before placing the revolver aside. Empty. Dorothea looked once for herself. Good. Marcus leaned one hip against the table. That sounded like approval. Do not become greedy. She unwrapped her mother's brass gauge and placed it beside the unloaded cartridges. First lesson. The tool does not know more than you do. Marcus looked at the gauge. Comforting. It should not be. She picked up one cartridge from the older known dry stock. You start with your eyes. Rim, case, seating. Anything split, swollen, corroded, or wrong enough that it makes you stop. And if nothing looks wrong, then nothing looks wrong. Not the same as safe. You are learning. He gave her a dry look. Painfully. Dorothea rolled the cartridge between her fingers under the lamp. Most mistakes start when a man asks a tool to give him certainty it cannot give. Marcus folded his arms. That sounds broader than ammunition. It applies to sheriffs. Naturally. She handed him the clean cartridge. What do you see? He turned it once. No green around the rim. Case is clean. Bullet sits straight. Good. Now compare this. She gave him one of the questionable county rounds. Marcus held it closer to the lamp. Darkening here, and a little corrosion at the edge. He did not scrape it with his thumbnail. Dorothea noticed. Better. Better than what? Ruining the surface because you are impatient. You assume poorly of me. I have known you 9 days. I am working with limited evidence. Marcus almost smiled. Cruel. Accurate. Dorothea demonstrated the gauge on a sound round first. Fit matters, but fit does not tell you where a cartridge was stored, whether a case took water, or how long it sat damp. She checked the questionable round next and set it aside. And if the gauge does not condemn it, Marcus asked, then I still use judgment. So the tool can disagree with your caution. The tool does not disagree. It answers a smaller question. Marcus considered that. You do not like large answers from small evidence. No. He looked toward the grey pine lid behind his desk. Useful habit. Dorothea passed him another cartridge. Your turn. Marcus examined it slowly. Surface clean. Rim looks right. seating looks even. Would you fire it? From the oldest stock? Yes. He paused before answering. Probably. Why probably? Because you have trained me into suspicion. Good. He handed it back. Your mother was exacting. Dorothea turned the brass gauge in her palm. Very. You said yesterday she kept the bench going after your father could not manage the fine work. She did. Did customers trust her? Dorothea's mouth tightened slightly. Some trusted her work. That is not always the same thing. Marcus waited. She could have left it there. He did not push. That made the memory easier to give. There was a man who came to the bench often enough that he started bringing friends, she said. He liked asking me to make difficult shots. Bottles at a distance. Coins against a stump. Things with no practical reason except to impress other men. Marcus's expression cooled. Did you enjoy it? Sometimes. Dorothea did not lie. Being good at something can be enjoyable even when the audience is foolish. Fair. Then one day he brought cartridges that had been stored in a shed with a leaking roof. I told him not to load them until they were checked. And he laughed. Marcus's jaw tightened. At you? At the idea that I knew better than he did. Dorothea looked down at the worn brass in her hand. He had no trouble believing I could hit a coin. He had trouble believing I could tell him not to pull a trigger. Marcus said nothing. Dorothea continued. That happened more than once. Men liked skill when it entertained them. They liked it less when it required them to change their minds. The room seemed smaller after that, not softer, more honest. Marcus rested one hand on the edge of the table. Changing my mind does not frighten me. Dorothea lifted her eyes. What does? His answer took longer. Being wrong when somebody depends on me. The words came without decoration. A deputy, a ranch hand, someone standing in front of a gun because I told him the ground was safe. Dorothea held his gaze. Those are not always the same thing. Being wrong and failing someone? Yes, they can feel the same from this side of the desk. Feeling the same does not make them the same. Marcus absorbed that without defending himself. Dorothea set the gauge down. Again, he picked up another cartridge. Rim. Good. Case. Good. Seating. Good. He turned it. There is a faint mark here. Would you fire it? Marcus considered. Not until I knew more. Dorothea nodded. You may survive the lesson. High praise. They reached for the brass gauge at the same time. Dorothea's fingers settled across his knuckles. His hand was warm from handling the cartridges, rough at the base of the fingers. Neither moved. The contact was different from the accidental brush at Mrs. Larkin's and different from the steadying hand at Mesquite Bend. There was no function left to excuse it. Marcus did not turn his palm beneath hers. He did not close his fingers. He simply waited. Dorothea became aware of the lamp flame. The faint street sounds beyond the office window. The open loading gate of Marcus's empty revolver on the cloth beside them. His eyes lifted from their joined hands to her face. Dorothea. Her name was not a request. That made it harder. She did not pull away, not immediately. The distance between them narrowed by a fraction. Marcus moved no farther than she did. His breathing changed. So did hers. The desire was real. So was the fact that they had never decided what marriage meant beyond vows, separate rooms, and working locks. Dorothea eased her hand free and took one step back. Marcus stopped with her. No disappointment sharpened into pressure. No claim followed because a husband might have made one. He rested both hands against the table instead. All right. Dorothea let out a slow breath. We should speak about it before we behave as though we already have. Yes. Not tonight. Then not tonight. She rapped the gauge again. Marcus picked up one of the sound cartridges instead of reaching for her. "Tomorrow you show me again." Dorothea glanced at him. The inspection. A trace of humor returned, not an excuse to stand too close. Heat touched her face. "Good. You sound disappointed. Do not ruin your progress." A knock sounded at the office door. Marcus checked through the side window before opening it. A county clerk stood outside with a tied packet under one arm. "Found the purchase records you asked for, Sheriff. Last month's deliveries." Marcus thanked him and carried the packet to his desk. Dorothea remained by the work table while he cut the string and unfolded the first sheet. Quantities, dates, supplier name, August Sorrel. Marcus turned to the next page. His hand stopped. Dorothea crossed the room. The lower portion of the paper bore a familiar signature in dark ink. Same slant she had seen across 11 letters. Same name beneath the county order. Marcus Teague. His own approval, his own handwriting. He stared at it. And for the first time since Dorothea had arrived in Silver City, the investigation was no longer something happening around him. It had his name on it. By the next morning, the gunsmith had finished with Hensley's revolver. Marcus collected it before breakfast, carried it to Hensley's place himself, and returned it with a plain warning. "Do not load anything from the sorrel box you left with me." Hensley flexed his bandaged hand and gave him a humorless look. "Wasn't planning to." "Good." Marcus did not stay. The damaged revolver was Hensley's property again. The marked cartridge box remained at the sheriff's office, separated from county stock. One loose end closed. The larger one waited on Marcus's desk. Dorothea was already there when he returned. The purchase papers lay where they had been left the night before, his signature visible beneath the county order. Marcus stood over it without sitting. "I remember this delivery," he said. "Nothing about it looked unusual. Crates intact, as far as I noticed. Any smell of damp? No. Any reason to distrust Sorrel then?" Marcus shook his head. "No." Dorothea rested one hand on the back of the chair opposite him. "Then signing was not the mistake. You sound certain." "I am certain about that part." He looked at her. "What part was the mistake?" "That depends on what you do now." Marcus glanced toward the window. Outside, Silver City was already moving. A wagon rolled past with 2 ranch buyers in the seat. One of them pointed toward the sheriff's office as he spoke to the other. Marcus noticed. "Word is spreading." "Yes, and my signature gave Sorrel weight." "Probably." "Not probably." He tapped the paper. "I know at least 2 ranchers bought from him after the county did. One man told me last month that if the sheriff trusted Sorrel's stock, he trusted it too." Dorothea did not soften the implication. "Then your warning will carry weight too." Marcus's mouth tightened. "If I warn everyone now and the damage happened after Sorrel sold the boxes, I could ruin a business on incomplete facts. Then, do not accuse him of knowingly selling damaged stock. People hear more than what is said. That was true when your signature reassured them too." Marcus went still. Dorothea continued before the point turned cruel. "You do not need certainty to tell people what you actually know." "Which is?" "County sorrel stock shows corrosion. Hensley suffered a cartridge failure and burned his hand. His remaining cartridges show similar mixed condition. You have already removed suspect rounds from your deputies." Marcus looked toward the back table. "You want a public warning?" "Yes." "Today?" "Yes." He walked to the window, jaw tight. "I sent inquiries about the freight mark. If I wait until morning, I may have an answer about where that damaged crate came from. And if you do not, then I warn anyway." Dorothea stepped closer to the desk. Your deputies already have safer ammunition. Marcus turned. Because I control what they carry, and the men outside this office control what they carry only if they know there is reason to question it. I am not ignoring them. No, you are asking them to take one more night of uncertainty you did not ask your own deputies to take. That struck cleanly. Marcus did not raise his voice. I can send word privately to the largest merchants before sundown. Tell them to hold anything visibly questionable. That helps, but it is not what you want. No, you think I am protecting Sorel. I think you are protecting certainty. Marcus absorbed that in silence. Dorothea remembered what he had said the night before. Being wrong when someone depended on him, she understood the fear now. That did not make delay harmless. Morning, he said finally. I make the broader warning in the morning, whether the freight answer comes or not. Dorothea held his gaze. Then morning is yours. You are angry. Yes, fair. What happens before morning will still be yours too. Marcus's face tightened, but he nodded. I know. He sent a deputy to 2 major merchants and another to a ranch supplier. No threats, no seizure, only a private warning to set aside obviously questionable sorrel stock, until the sheriff could say more. Dorothea watched him act and still wished he had acted farther. That night at Mesquite Bend, neither punished the other with silence. They ate at the scarred kitchen table and spoke about ordinary things, because disagreement did not need to become cruelty. A loose shoe on the bay gelding, a fence post that had leaned another inch. The roof Marcus still claimed leaked only during serious rain. At the hallway, he stopped outside his own room. I leave before dawn. I assumed, if the freight reply is waiting, warn them anyway. Marcus nodded. Good night, Dorothea. Good night. The pounding at the front door came before daylight. One of the ranch hands called from the entry. Sheriff. Rider from town. Marcus was dressed before Dorothea finished fastening her skirt. The messenger stood outside beside a sweat-darkened horse. Another cartridge went wrong, he said. Marcus stepped onto the porch. Who? Baird, south end of town. Alive? Yes. Doctor says he'll mend. Split case threw something along his cheek, not deep. Dorothea came up behind Marcus. Where did he buy the ammunition? The rider looked at her. Sorrels. Marcus closed his eyes once, not long. Then he opened them and acted. Ride back. Tell my deputy to warn every merchant selling sorrel ammunition to hold questionable stock. Persuasion only. No seizure. Tell him I am coming. Yes, Sheriff. The rider mounted. Marcus turned toward Dorothea. You were right. She did not give him comfort he had not earned. Then act like it. I will. By sunrise they were in Silver City. Marcus sat at his desk and wrote the notice himself. Dorothea stood across from him, but did not dictate. Some ammunition supplied through August Sorrel showed visible corrosion. 2 reported cartridge failures had now caused injuries. Owners of questionable boxes were advised not to fire them until their condition and source could be checked. Grant County deputies had already removed suspect stock from use. Marcus paused, then added a final paragraph. I approved the county purchase. I delayed a broader warning while seeking more confirmation. That delay was my decision. Marcus Teague, Sheriff. Dorothea read the lines once. You do not have to include that. Marcus sanded the ink. Yes, I do. Why? Because if I leave it out, someone will decide you frightened me into this. His eyes lifted to hers. I will not let my wife carry my delay. That mattered more than apology would have. Copies went out with deputies and riders. By mid-morning, backlash arrived with them. One merchant complained that Marcus had allowed his bride to frighten the county. A ranch buyer joked loudly that Dorothea now chose what went into the sheriff's belt. Another man said Marcus had never questioned Sorrel until a woman started measuring cartridges in his office. Marcus did not answer every insult. When someone asked directly whether Dorothea had influenced him, he said, "Her judgment was better than mine on this matter." Then he went back to work. Near noon, Dorothea found him alone behind the desk, the signed county purchase paper still lying beside his elbow. "Any freight answer?" she asked. "Not yet. You warned them anyway. Late." "Yes." Marcus accepted the word. "I should have listened sooner." No excuse followed. No speech about good intentions. Dorothea crossed the room. He remained still. She lifted one hand and placed it against his jaw. Rough morning stubble pressed into her palm. Marcus's breathing changed, but he did not move toward her. Dorothea waited just long enough to make the choice unmistakable. Then she closed the distance and kissed him. Brief at first. Warm. Marcus answered only after her mouth met his, one hand settling lightly at her upper arm without pulling her closer than she came willingly. When Dorothea stepped back, he released her. The kiss did not erase the argument. It answered another question entirely. Her thumb moved once along his jaw before she lowered her hand. "Next time," she said, "listen before someone bleeds." Marcus held her gaze. "I intend to." A knock came at the office door. The deputy opened it halfway. "Sheriff, August Sorrel is here." Marcus looked toward the public warning on the wall, then at Dorothea. "Let him in." August stepped through the doorway, took one look at the posted warning, and understood that whatever private bargain he had hoped to make would not happen in an empty room. Two deputies were moving in and out with copies of the notice. A ranch buyer stood near the wall, waiting to ask about a box he had bought the week before. Marcus did not offer August privacy. "If you want to discuss replacement stock," he said, "come back tomorrow morning." August's eyes moved to Dorothea, then to the warning bearing Marcus's admission of delay. "By tomorrow, half the county may think I poisoned them. Then, tomorrow you can tell me what you intend to do about the stock." Marcus did not raise his voice. "Today I am warning people." August left without another word. Over the next 3 days, days 12 through 14, Silver City did what towns did when facts were incomplete and reputations were easier to carry than evidence. Some merchants held questionable sorrel boxes behind their counters. Others kept selling stock that showed no visible damage. One ranch buyer insisted the whole matter was exaggerated because he had fired 6 cartridges without trouble. Another refused to load a single round from the same supplier. Nobody agreed on enough to call it a public judgment. That was better than a panic and worse than clarity. August returned on the morning of day 12. This time he came without the polished calm he had worn before. 3 buyers refused delivery yesterday, he said. One merchant wants his money back on unopened cases. Marcus remained behind his desk. Dorothea stood near the work table with no cartridge in her hand and no demonstration prepared. "You offered replacement stock," Marcus said. "I still do." "Without conditions?" August's mouth flattened. "Without charge." That was not the question. August glanced toward the warning on the wall. "You want bluntness? Fine. I replace the county stock. You say publicly there is no evidence I knowingly sold damaged ammunition." Marcus answered at once. "No. You keep saying that as though repetition makes it reasonable. It makes it consistent." August's gaze shifted to Dorothea, and she approves, I assume. Dorothea said, "Marcus does not need my permission to refuse you." "No, He only seems to need your judgment before he makes any decision involving a cartridge. The insult was shaped for Marcus, not her. Dorothea let it miss. August continued. You arrive with a revolver, a brass measuring tool, and suddenly every merchant in town is afraid of stock he was happy to buy last month. His eyes went to the gauge where it lay on Dorothea's folded cloth. He had seen it before. There was no surprise in his recognition now. You have turned one little instrument into a badge of your own. Dorothea rested her fingertips on the table, nowhere near the gauge. It measures fit. That is all. Yet people treat you as though you can pronounce judgment on every box in Grant County. I have told them the opposite. That does not matter once people begin telling stories. Marcus said, then stop helping them by trying to buy reassurance from my office. August looked at him sharply. I am trying to keep a business alive. Then help us identify what happened to the shipment. You have a wet scrapboard and damaged ammunition that may have been stored badly after sale, and 2 injured men. That ended August's reply for a beat. The side door opened. His backstock clerk entered, carrying a tied bundle of papers. He stopped when he saw Dorothea. Mr. Sorrel, you asked me to bring the backstock tally. August held out his hand. Give it here. The clerk crossed the room. Dorothea saw dates and crate counts on the top sheet before August folded the papers under his arm. Were you the one who logged the county shipment? She asked. The clerk looked toward her. Some of it, ma'am. August's head turned. Dorothea continued. Did you handle the cases when they came into storage? The clerk drew breath to answer. That is enough, August said. The young man froze. Marcus watched him. She asked a simple question. And he is my employee. August's voice had gone hard. He keeps inventory. He does not know where every freight case spent every mile before it reached Silver City. That was not what she asked, Marcus said. August turned toward the clerk. Take the remaining papers back to the store. The young man lowered his eyes. Yes, sir. He left. Dorothea did not need Marcus to tell her he had noticed the fear. His attention stayed on the doorway a second longer than necessary. August replaced his hat. You are making an enemy of half the business people who depend on stable trade, Marcus said. No, I am asking them to decide what risk they want to carry. Under her guidance, a man entering the office behind August heard that last line. He was a ranch buyer Dorothea had seen twice before. That true, Sheriff? Your wife, picking what goes in county belts now. Marcus could have dismissed him. Instead, he answered where August could hear. On this matter, her judgment has been better than mine. The buyer blinked. August stared at Marcus as though he had just admitted weakness instead of accuracy. You say that publicly? He asked. I just did. August's face closed. Then you deserve whatever reputation follows. He walked out. By day 13, the attack had spread more efficiently than any correction. Dorothea supposedly planned to open a gun shop. Marcus supposedly refused to make a decision without asking her. One version had her demanding that every sorrel cartridge in Silver City be surrendered to the sheriff. Another claimed she wanted county money to replace private ammunition. None of it was true. That made the strategy clearer. We stop answering every lie, Dorothea said. She and Marcus stood over the sheriff's desk late that afternoon with a short list of merchants who had asked for guidance. If we spend all day denying stories, August chooses what we talk about. Marcus tapped the list. What do we talk about instead? What people can do without believing either of us. Which is, Dorothea counted on her fingers. Keep questionable stock separate. Mark it. Keep it dry. Do not fire it. Buy elsewhere if they want to, and let them keep possession of their own goods. No seizures. You do not have lawful reason for one. No public shooting test. Dorothea gave him a look. I would rather keep my fingers. Marcus's mouth moved. Good. We also need someone who knows that freight mark. He glanced toward the grey pine lid behind his desk. Local freight men have not recognized it. Then ask farther along the route. Marcus opened a drawer and removed a folded note. A former transfer man named Hale worked west of here last year. I got word this morning he is at a relay point along the road. How far? Reachable in a day if I leave early. Not a sensible out and back before dark. Then bring him. Marcus looked at her. I can send a deputy. Dorothea did not answer yet. There was another problem taking shape. One August had accidentally made visible. The more Marcus stood beside her while merchants listened, the easier it became to claim her authority came from his badge. She carried that thought back to Mesquite Bend on the evening of day 14. The October air had turned sharp after sunset, cool enough that their breath showed faintly near the porch. Marcus sat on the step, forearms resting on his knees. Dorothea sat beside him. For a while they listened to a ranch hand latch the barn and a horse moving inside the corral. Hale is still there, Marcus said. If I leave at dawn, I should reach the relay later tomorrow. If he agrees to come back, we return the following day. Dorothea nodded. Good. You want me to go myself? Yes. Marcus turned his head. Why? Dorothea placed her hand over his where it rested on the porch board. He did not close his fingers immediately. He gave her the choice of leaving the touch exactly where she had placed it. Dorothea curled her fingers around his. Only then did his hand turn beneath hers and hold. Because tomorrow I want to speak to the merchants without you. Marcus's grip tightened once. Without me there? Yes, August is spreading stories about you. I know. Some of those men resent being corrected by anyone, much less a woman they met 2 weeks ago. I know that too. Marcus studied her face. You expect trouble, resistance, difference. Trouble needs your badge. Resistance does not. His thumb moved over her knuckles. I could stand outside, then they will know you are outside. Dorothea held his hand more firmly. If men agree with me while the sheriff is in the room, they can tell themselves they agreed with you. Marcus understood. She saw the dislike in his face before the acceptance reached it. You want their decision without my authority carrying yours. Yes. The word came easier because he had found it himself. Marcus leaned closer by degrees. Dorothea stayed where she was. His forehead touched hers. Warm skin against the cold air. Nothing more. No attempt to turn the first kiss they had shared into a claim on the next one. He waited, and when Dorothea drew back, he let her. I do not like leaving you in Silver City while August is making you a target, he said. You do not have to like it. You have become fond of that argument. It keeps working. Marcus looked toward the road beyond the ranch yard. I leave at dawn on day 15. I find Hale. I bring him back day 16. Good. And you meet the merchants without me. Yes. His fingers remained around hers. Dorothea. What? If you need me before I am back, I will ask. That stopped him, he nodded once. Dorothea held his gaze. Marcus, I need you to leave Silver City without me. Marcus left Mesquite Bend before sunrise on day 15. He did not ask Dorothea to reconsider. That mattered more than any promise he could have made on the porch the night before. By the time the eastern sky had turned from black to iron gray, his gelding was saddled, his coat buttoned, and the road west already pale with dust. Dorothea stood beside the hitch rail while he checked the girth one last time. You have the note? she asked. Marcus touched the inside pocket of his coat and Hale's last known relay. If he refuses, I ask better, not louder. Marcus gave her a look. You have become suspicious of my methods. I have become familiar with them. He mounted. The movement put him above her, but he did not use the height to turn departure into command. I should reach the relay before evening. If Hale agrees, we come back tomorrow. Day 16. Yes. Dorothea folded her arms against the morning chill. Come back when you said you would. Marcus's face softened. I will. He rode out. Dorothea watched until the road took him behind a low rise, then turned toward the wagon she had arranged for town. There was no badge beside her. That was the point. By mid-morning, 7 men had gathered in the back room of a hardware concern near the center of Silver City. 2 were merchants. 3 bought supplies for ranches. 1 represented a livery. The last had come because he believed August Sorrel was being treated unfairly and wanted someone to know it. Marcus's deputy had carried word that Dorothea wished to speak with them, but he did not remain in the room. Dorothea stood at the head of the scarred table with no revolver displayed and no brass gauge set out like a charm. Her mother's tools stayed wrapped in her valise. Mrs. Teague, one merchant said, I have 4 sorrel cases on my shelves. Are you asking me to stop selling all of them? I am asking you to hold any questionable stock unused until we know more. That is nearly the same thing. No, if the stock proves sound, you still own merchandise. And if I lose sales waiting, then you lose sales. The answer startled him. Easy for you to say, no. Easy would be pretending I can guarantee what I cannot. A ranch buyer near the wall folded his arms. Still no proof Sorrel knowingly sold bad ammunition. Correct. The hostile man gave a small laugh. Then why are we here? Dorothea rested both hands on the table. Because County Sorrel's stock showed corrosion. Hensley suffered a cartridge failure and burned his hand. Baird suffered another failure and was cut along the cheek. A crate lid from a sorrel delivery at Mesquite Bend shows old water exposure beneath later paint. Marcus is bringing back a freight man who may recognize the mark. The sheriff, the livery representative said, is not here. Dorothea met his eyes. No. Where is he? West of town looking for that witness. The hostile man leaned forward. He left you to do this? I asked him to. That changed the room more than Dorothea expected. Not dramatically. No one apologized, but several men stopped looking toward the doorway as if waiting for Marcus to appear and turn her words into official instruction. One merchant frowned. Why would you ask him to leave? Because if the sheriff stands beside me, every man who agrees can tell himself he agreed with the badge. Dorothea looked around the table. He is gone. Decide for yourselves. The first merchant tapped 2 fingers against the wood. Suppose my boxes show no stain. Keep them dry. Mark them so they do not get mixed with other stock. Hold them if you choose. Bring them to the sheriff's office. No, keep possession of your own goods. You want us to trust you. No. Dorothea pointed toward the unopened box one buyer had brought. I want you to decide whether you are willing to risk firing something while 2 failures remain unexplained. The ranch buyer who had challenged her earlier said, and if I decide I am? Then I am not the sheriff, and the sheriff is not here. No. She held his stare. That is why your decision belongs to you. The man looked away first. Another merchant said, people say you are opening a gun shop. People are inventive. Are you? No. They say you tell Teague what cartridges his deputies carry. I told Marcus what I would not trust. He decided what his deputies carried. Difference seems thin. Dorothea's voice stayed calm. only if you think advising a man and owning his judgment are the same thing. Nobody answered that immediately. The meeting lasted less than an hour. By the end, 4 men agreed to hold questionable sorrel stock apart from sale. 2 said they would warn buyers that some boxes were under concern. 1 refused to change anything. Dorothea did not follow him into the street. She did not need unanimity to prove herself right. She needed choices made with eyes open. As the men dispersed, the first merchant stopped beside her. If this freight man tells you nothing useful, then we know less than we hoped. And you still want the stock held? I want you to decide whether uncertainty is worth a hand. His eyes moved to his own fingers. Fair enough. By late afternoon, the consequences had begun without Marcus. 1 merchant moved 3 sorrel boxes from his front shelf to a back room. Another told a ranch buyer he could sell him different stock at worse terms if he wanted it. The man who had refused the meeting's advice kept selling. Dorothea heard all 3 outcomes before supper. None felt like victory. They felt like responsibility moving outward. Marcus did not return that night. Dorothea knew he would not. The agreement had been clear. Still, when darkness settled over Mesquite Bend and his place at the kitchen table remained empty, absence felt different from theory. She slept in her own room with the lock unused. Before dawn on day 16, Marcus and Hale started back from the relay point where they had spent the night. Dorothea did not know that yet. She only knew what Marcus had promised. By mid-afternoon, she was at the sheriff's office when hoofbeats stopped outside. The deputy looked toward the door. Dorothea was already moving. Marcus stepped in first, road dust on his coat and fatigue in the set of his shoulders. Behind him came an older man with a weathered face, grey in his beard, and the stiff-legged walk of someone who had spent more years on wagons and horseback than chairs. Marcus saw Dorothea and stopped. She crossed the room before deciding whether anyone was watching. Her arms went around him. Marcus opened his, only after she stepped into him, then held her with firm, contained warmth. Dorothea rested against him long enough to feel how much tension she had carried since the previous dawn. "You came back," she said. "I said I would." She drew away enough to see his face. "Thank you for going." His hand remained lightly at her back. "You asked me to." The older man cleared his throat with deliberate politeness. Dorothea released Marcus. "Mr. Hale, Ma'am." Marcus nodded toward the desk. He worked a transfer route last year. The unique grey pine crate lid remained exactly where Dorothea had last seen it, upright behind Marcus's desk. Marcus brought it forward and laid it flat on the work table. Hensley's marked suspect cartridge box stayed on its separate shelf. The county stock remained apart. Nothing else moved. Hale bent over the lid. He did not touch at first. His eyes followed the partial burned freight mark, then the dark waterline beneath later black paint. Where did this come from? "Mesquite Bend," Marcus said. "Used from a sorrel ammunition crate delivered about a month before Dorothea arrived." Hale leaned closer. "This mark is older than that delivery." Dorothea felt her attention sharpen. "You recognize it?" "Yes." He pointed just above the burned symbol without touching the wood. "Salvage lot. Freight took water hard enough that several cases were sold cheap instead of carried onward as good stock." Marcus's voice stayed steady. "Ammunition among it?" "Yes." "Were buyers told the cases had taken water?" "They were." The answer changed the meaning of the room. Dorothea did not let it run farther than it should. "Can you identify who bought the ammunition cases?" Hale straightened. "I can." Marcus did not move. "Who?" Hale looked from him to Dorothea, Then back to the grey pine lid, August Sorrel. By the morning of day 17, August Sorrel's name had stopped being a rumour and become a line. Men were willing to draw around their own money. Marcus arranged the meeting in the back room of a Silver City supply house, because it was large enough for several merchants and ranch buyers without turning the sheriff's office into a marketplace. He brought the grey pine crate lid himself, wrapped in old canvas, and one deputy carried Hensley's marked suspect cartridge box from its shelf at the office. Hensley arrived separately, his right hand still stiff and his fingers slow to close. 3 merchants brought unopened sorrel boxes of their own. 2 others carried folded receipts inside their coats. No one surrendered anything at the door. Dorothea noticed that first. Men came because they wanted answers, not because Marcus had ordered them there. Hale stood near the end of the table while Marcus unwrapped the crate lid and laid it flat. "Tell them what you told us," Marcus said. Hale bent over the burned freight mark. "This came from a salvage lot I handled last year. Several freight cases took water hard enough that they were sold cheaper instead of carried onward as good stock." One merchant folded his arms. "Ammunition among it?" "Yes." "Buyer?" "August Sorrel." The room tightened. Marcus did not let the reaction run ahead of the facts. "Were buyers told the freight had taken water?" he asked. "They were told the cases had been wet." Hale pointed near the old tide line without touching the wood. "That is why the price dropped." A ranch buyer looked at Dorothea. "Then that proves Sorrel knew he was selling bad cartridges. It proves he knew he bought ammunition from a water-damaged salvage lot," Dorothea said. "We still need the part between that purchase and the later boxes sold here." The man frowned, but Marcus had already moved to the next piece. He placed the county purchase paper on the table, his own signature visible beneath Sorrel's name. "This is the county order I approved." Then he looked toward the merchants. "You brought yours." One by one, folded receipts appeared. Marcus read dates and quantities aloud, copied the useful details into his notebook, and handed every original back to its owner. One sale came after the county order. Another fell in the same week. A third was later still. "You bought first," one merchant said to Marcus. "Yes." I remember thinking, if the sheriff trusted Sorrel's stock, it was good enough for me. Marcus did not look away. "I know. So your signature helped him. It helped buyers trust him. Same thing from this side of the counter." Marcus accepted that. "That is why my name was on the warning." Hensley moved closer. His injured hand did not bend properly when he rested it on the table. The room's attention shifted to him without anyone asking. He looked at the marked cartridge box the deputy had brought from the sheriff's office. "That one is mine." Marcus nodded. "Still under your name." Hensley tapped the box with 2 fingers from his good hand. "I don't care which man in this room trusted Sorrel first. I care whether the next fellow who pulls a trigger ends up like this." He lifted the injured hand slightly, then let it fall back. No speech followed. He did not need one. The merchant nearest him looked at the 2 sorrel boxes he had stacked by his boots. He bent, picked them up, and carried them to the far end of the room. "Those stay off my sales shelf until this is settled." Another merchant took a pencil from behind his ear and wrote "Hold" across the top of one case. A ranch buyer said, "I'll buy from the other supplier until we know more, even if it costs me." The man who had challenged Dorothea in the earlier meeting did not move his box. "Mine looks clean." Dorothea looked at him. "That is better than visible corrosion." "Would you fire it? Not only because the outside looks clean." "Then when is it fit?" He asked the question differently now, less as a challenge, more as a problem he wanted solved. "Not when I say so," Dorothea answered. "When we know enough about its condition and where it came from to trust it." He studied her, then looked down at the box. "I'll hold it." Another merchant shook his head. "I won't. Not all of Sorrel's stock has failed." Dorothea did not argue. "Then keep it separate from the rest and do not mix boxes. That all. That is all I can ask you to do with certainty." Marcus looked around the room. No applause, no sudden conversion. Better. Men were making decisions they could defend later. One merchant requested replacement stock through another supplier. Another said he would warn buyers but continue selling unaffected goods. The skeptical man kept his cases but marked them so they would not be confused with other purchases. Hensley's stiff hand had done more than another page of explanation could have. Before the meeting ended, Hale looked once more at the grey pine lid. "There is one thing I want clear. The salvage cases were not sold as ordinary dry freight. Buyers knew the packaging had taken water." Marcus's attention sharpened. "You heard that said?" "I did." Dorothea saw several merchants look toward the receipts in their hands. August had known what kind of lot he bought. That still did not establish what he did afterward. But the road between Salvage and Silver City had just narrowed. Marcus rapped the crate lid again. The deputy took up Hensley's marked cartridge box. "This goes back where it came from," Marcus said. Hensley nodded. "Fine by me." The merchants collected their own receipts and boxes. Nothing stayed behind unless its owner chose that. Outside, one man who had doubted Dorothea from the beginning stopped her near the doorway. "Mrs. Teague." "Yes?" He held his hat in one hand. "I've got 6 boxes at my place. I'll hold them until you say they're fit." Dorothea shook her head. "Until we know they're fit." He repeated it slowly. "Until we know." That was the reversal she wanted. Not obedience, judgment. Dorothea reached for Marcus's hand as they started back toward the sheriff's office. The gesture was brief and public. Marcus closed his fingers around hers without pulling her nearer. "You did not need my badge in that room," he said. "No. Good. You sound pleased with yourself. I am trying humility again." Still poor at it, his mouth moved as if he might laugh. The deputy came through the sheriff's office door before he could. The grey pine lid had already been returned behind Marcus's desk, dry and upright. Hensley's marked cartridge box was back on its separate shelf. County suspect stock remained apart. The deputy's face made the humor disappear. "Sheriff." Marcus turned. "What happened?" "Sorrel's clerk never came for the statement you asked him to give." Dorothea's attention sharpened. "The back stock clerk?" "Yes, ma'am." Marcus removed his hat. "Did he send word?" "No, I went by Sorrel's place." Another employee said August called him into the back office this morning and sent everybody else out. Then Sorrel says the clerk quit. Marcus's expression hardened. "Quit and went where?" "Nobody knows." "Anyone see him leave town?" "No. Take a trunk." "Not that anyone saw." Dorothea remembered the clerk lowering his eyes the first time August stopped him from answering. Then again, 3 days later, when he had been sent out with the back stock papers. Twice August had prevented a simple answer. Now the man who might know what happened between wet salvage cases and clean retail boxes had disappeared. Marcus looked toward his deputy. "Start with the livery, freight yards, boarding houses, and the road south. Ask who saw him last. Ask whether he carried anything with him." The deputy nodded. "Already started. One warehouse hand thinks he saw him near Sorrel's storage lane late this morning, but I have not confirmed it." Marcus picked up his coat. Dorothea looked toward the back room where the grey pine lid now rested again, in its fixed place. They knew August bought the damaged freight. They knew he continued selling ammunition afterward. What they did not know was the part that mattered most. What happened to those wet cases after they reached Silver City? Marcus settled his hat on his head. If August found that clerk before we did, I want to know why. The lead came together by noon on day 18. Not from one lucky witness, but from 4 ordinary questions asked in the right order. A freight handler had seen Sorrell's clerk near the south storage lane. A wagon driver had noticed August crossing the same direction afterward. Then, the young stable hand from the livery remembered more. They were together, he told Marcus. Clerk was ahead, Mr. Sorrell behind him. Carrying anything? Marcus asked. No trunk, no bedroll. Did the clerk look like a man leaving town? The boy shook his head. Looked like a man being hurried. Marcus glanced at Dorothea. That was enough to justify looking, not enough to justify assuming what they would find. He turned to his deputies. Jonas, you come with us. Carter, you stay here. Carter looked toward the shelves. With the evidence? Yes. The crate lid stays behind my desk. Hensley's cartridge box stays marked and separate. County papers stay where they are. Nobody handles anything unless I tell you otherwise. Understood. Hale had already given his statement and was nowhere near the office. Dorothea noticed the difference. Marcus was not using a civilian witness as a guard simply because he happened to be available. He was treating danger like duty, not drama. Marcus looked at Dorothea next. You still intend to come? Yes. Then if the clerk is between us and a gun, I may tell you where I need you. Dorothea held his gaze. If it keeps him alive. That is the only reason. She nodded, no argument. Independence did not require stupidity. They approached Sorrell's storage yard from separate angles. Jonas moved wide toward the rear alley where a man might try to run between buildings. Marcus took the main loading side. Dorothea stayed several paces off his right shoulder, far enough not to crowd him, close enough to see through the half-open warehouse door. The afternoon light fell hard across stacked crates and wagon ruts. No horse stood saddled outside. No wagon was loaded for travel. Then voices carried from within. August 1st. You will say the damaged cases were separated. The clerk answered, strained. They weren't. You will say they were. I kept the tallies. A pause. Then August's voice, lower. Then you will forget the tallies. Marcus lifted one hand. Dorothea stopped. Jonas disappeared farther along the side wall. Marcus drew his revolver, but kept it low. August, silence inside. Come out with your hands where I can see them. August laughed once. You brought her. Send the clerk out. There is no need for this. Then make it easy. A scrape came from inside. The clerk's voice followed. Sheriff? Marcus shifted left, opening his angle to the door. Can you hear me? Yes. Are you hurt? No. August snapped. Keep your mouth shut. Marcus's expression hardened. Are you free to walk out? The answer took longer. No. That changed the situation. Marcus's voice lost every trace of negotiation. August, step away from him and put down any weapon you have. I am not armed. Dorothea heard the faint metal click, hammer drawn back. Marcus heard it too. You just lied to me. Movement appeared inside the doorway. The clerk emerged first, pale, shoulders rigid. August came behind him with a revolver pressed near the man's ribs. Too close. Dorothea's hand went to her own weapon. Marcus did not look back. August, he said, lower the gun. You first. You are holding an unarmed man. He is free to leave. The clerk's voice shook. No, I'm not. August's jaw tightened. Dorothea drew. The line formed automatically. Distance, shoulder, clerk's body, August's face partly visible. A sliver of chest, not enough. She could hit what she could see under better circumstances. That did not make the shot clean. August noticed where her revolver pointed. His mouth twisted. There she is. Marcus moved another half-step left. August's attention stayed on Dorothea. Everyone in town talks about what you can do. Dorothea kept her breathing steady. Go on, August said. Show them. The clerk shifted under the pressure of the barrel. Dorothea's finger rested alongside the trigger guard. Not on it. August smiled. What is wrong, Mrs. Teague? Thought you were supposed to be good. Dorothea's mother's voice returned with brutal simplicity. Measure first. Pride was not measurement. Fear was not measurement. Having a target was not the same as having permission. I am good, Dorothea said. Then shoot. No. His smile vanished. No, because being able isn't the same as being right. The clerk's knees bent slightly as if the answer had loosened something in him. August glanced down. That was enough. Jonas appeared at the rear corner, cutting off the alley. Marcus closed from the left. Drop it. August jerked the revolver away from the clerk and toward Marcus. The clerk dropped hard to one knee. Marcus struck August's gun wrist with his forearm. The revolver fired once. The shot tore into dirt and low timber near the threshold. No one fell. Dorothea kicked the weapon clear while Marcus drove August against the doorframe and twisted his arm behind him. August fought once, violently. Marcus's shoulder took the impact against the wood. His face tightened, but he stayed on his feet. Jonas arrived with his own revolver trained on August. Enough, Marcus said. August stopped. A small split had opened at the corner of his mouth where he struck the frame. Dust streaked his coat. No worse. The clerk was still on one knee, breathing hard. Dorothea holstered her revolver before going near him. Are you injured? He shook his head. No. Then stand slowly. He did. August glared at him. Liar. The clerk looked back, and for the first time his fear had anger beneath it. You told me to burn the tallies. Marcus secured August's wrists. We are going to separate two things. You are being held for what we just witnessed here. The ammunition matter gets sorted on its own facts. August stared at him. You think this proves anything about my business? It proves you held your clerk at gunpoint. Marcus turned to the clerk. Tell me only what you personally know. The young man swallowed. The salvage cases came in wet. Dorothea's attention sharpened. You saw them? Yes. What happened after, mister? Sorrel had us open them. August said, do not answer. Marcus did not raise his voice. He is no longer asking your permission. The clerk continued. The worst cartridges were set aside. Some were too far gone. Green on them. Swollen cases. Those got discarded. And the rest, Dorothea asked. The ones that looked better were dried, wiped down, put into cleaner boxes. Mixed condition. That answered why some rounds had looked ordinary, while others showed damage. Marcus asked, who ordered that? Mr. Sorrel. What were buyers told? Nothing about salvage, not that I heard. Did you keep records? Yes. Where? Back office. 3 folded tally sheets behind the ledger desk. Blue pencil at the top. They showed damaged cases opened and how much was moved into other boxes. Marcus looked at Jonas. You take only those. Jonas nodded. Come with me. The clerk led him toward the back office. August strained once against Marcus's restraint. You are ruining me over a frightened boy's story. Marcus did not look at him. The papers will either support him or they will not. Jonas returned carrying 3 folded sheets. Blue pencil marks showed at the top. He kept them flat in one hand. These? The clerk nodded. Those. Marcus said. Good, we are done here. By dusk, August was under guard in Silver City for the armed threat and coercion they had witnessed. The clerk was placed in a safe room away from Sorrel so he could give a fuller statement without being stared down. The 3 tally sheets were secured with the county papers. The grey pine lid remained behind Marcus's desk. Hensley's marked cartridge box remained on its separate shelf. Nothing had to move simply because the story had reached its answer. When the last deputy stepped out, Dorothea finally looked at Marcus instead of the evidence. He rolled his left shoulder once and stopped. That hurt, she said. A little. Sit. You are becoming fond of that order. Sit. Marcus obeyed. Dorothea stood in front of him. Anywhere else? No, you are sure? Yes. His eyes dropped briefly to her right hand, then rose again. You had the shot. Dorothea shook her head. I had a target. Marcus understood at once. Not the same thing. No. He leaned back slightly in the chair. I saw the shot you didn't take. The words reached deeper than praise for any shot she had ever made. Dorothea's throat tightened. That was the one my mother cared about. Marcus did not tell her she was brave. He did not claim she had saved everyone. He simply accepted the meaning. Dorothea crossed the last step between them and put both arms around him. Marcus opened his arms only after she moved into the embrace, favoring the bruised shoulder but never turning the pain into distance. Dorothea rested against him until his breathing slowed. When she lifted her face, Marcus waited. She closed the space. The kiss was deeper than the first one in the sheriff's office, warmer than relief alone, and still held inside choice. His hand settled at her back, firm, never demanding more than she gave. When they parted, Dorothea stayed close. Trusting my judgment mattered more than trusting my aim. Marcus touched his forehead briefly to hers. I know. Later, back at Mesquite Bend, Dorothea passed her bedroom and saw the travel trunk against the wall. Closed, intact. Ready if she wanted it. August was under guard. The clerk was safe. No danger blocked the road now. For the first time since she had arrived in Silver City, staying would have to mean something entirely different. The travel trunk looked different on the morning of day 19. It stood against the wall in Dorothea's room, exactly where it had been before August. Sorrel drew a gun on his clerk. Closed, intact, ready to be packed or ignored. Nothing outside the house prevented either choice now. Marcus knew that too. He came into the kitchen, moving his left shoulder more slowly than usual. The bruise from the warehouse struggled dark beneath his shirt. Dorothea watched him reach for the coffee pot and stop halfway. Sit. Marcus lowered his arm. You have developed an alarming fondness for that word. Your shoulder has developed an alarming fondness for pretending it is not hurt. It hurts. Good. Sit. He obeyed. Dorothea poured coffee and placed his cup near his right hand. Marcus rested his forearms on the table, favoring the bruised side. Carter sent word before dawn. August? Still under guard for the armed threat against his clerk. There will be a preliminary examination. The ammunition complaints remain separate. The clerk gave a fuller statement. The 3 tally sheets support part of what he told us. Damaged cases opened. Quantities moved afterward. Dorothea sat across from him. Enough to prove everything? No. Good. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You are pleased we do not have everything. I am pleased you are not pretending we do. His mouth moved faintly. Your lessons have ruined me. Improved you. Debatable. He took a drink of coffee, then looked down the short hall toward her room. Dorothea knew where his attention had gone, even before he spoke. There is one question we cannot leave for August to answer for us. Which one? whether you stay. Dorothea's fingers tightened once around her cup. Marcus did not move closer. You came west because of 11 letters, and because we both wanted to see if the arrangement made sense in person. Then almost every day after that became cartridges, merchants, injuries, or sorrel. You make our courtship sound efficient. It has not been dull. His expression sobered. But danger is no longer keeping you here. No, and marriage should not. The words were plain. Their meaning was not, if you want to leave, I will help you. Dorothea waited. Marcus continued. Mrs. Larkin will give you a room if you want time in town. If you want to go farther, I will pay the fare if you need it. You do not owe anyone a public reason. Not me, not Silver City. And what would you tell people? Whatever you want told. Suppose I want nothing told, then nothing. Dorothea studied him. He was not giving her an imaginary door. He was giving her lodging, money, time, transportation, and the right to refuse explanation. Practical freedom. That cost more than a romantic speech would have. Do you want me to go? She asked. No. The answer came immediately. You did not have to think. I have been thinking for 20 days. About whether you want a wife? About whether I want you. Dorothea stayed still. Marcus pushed back from the table and stood, though he remained on the other side. I want your judgment even when it makes my life difficult. I want to hear you tell me when I have put the wrong tool on your work cloth. I want you at Mesquite Bend when you choose to be there, and I want you able to leave a room when you need space without wondering whether I will punish you for it. Dorothea's throat tightened. Marcus went on. I want your laughter, your temper when I deserve it. The way you refuse to say more than the facts allow. I want you beside me when there is no cartridge to inspect and no man to stop. He drew one breath. I do not want you because you are useful. That struck harder than she expected. Marcus's voice lowered. I love you. No gunshot followed. No crowd. No danger forcing an answer before either of them could think. Only morning light, cooling coffee, his bruised shoulder, and the trunk down the hall. Dorothea rose. When I first came here, I told you I wanted to know whether the man in the letters existed. You said you thought he did. I was still deciding what that meant. Marcus waited. Dorothea crossed around the table and stopped within reach. The marriage stopped feeling like an arrangement before I noticed it had. When? When I asked you to leave Silver City. A crease appeared between his brows. Not when I came back. Coming back proved you kept your word. Dorothea placed one hand against his chest, away from the injured shoulder. Going proved you trusted mine. His heart beat hard beneath her palm. Marcus did not cover her hand. He let her decide whether it stayed. Dorothea stepped closer. I love you too. Relief crossed his face without disguise. She almost smiled at how human it made him. Then she rose onto her toes and kissed him. Marcus's hands settled lightly at her waist only after she closed the distance. The kiss was slow, warm, and free of urgency. No apology beneath it, no danger. When Dorothea drew back, Marcus let her go as easily as he had always promised he would. You are sure? He asked. You were allowed one foolish question. I thought husbands got two. Not this husband. Understood. Dorothea kissed him again, shorter this time, because she wanted to, then stepped away. Marcus looked toward the hallway. The trunk stays where it is. For now. Marcus. Right. One question. On day 21, he showed her a cleared corner of the tack room. Not a new building. Not a miraculous shop. A sturdy workbench stood beneath the window where light fell cleanly across its surface. One shelf had been lowered. A lamp hook had been moved. A shallow wooden tray, sat near the back edge for pins and small parts. Dorothea inspected the arrangement while Marcus leaned against the doorway. His shoulder still stiff, but better than it had been 2 mornings earlier. "You did this yourself?" she asked. "I supervised men with 2 good shoulders. Wisdom at last. Do not become accustomed to it." Dorothea ran her palm across the bench. "If I take paid work here, I choose what I take. Yes, if a man brings me something beyond what I know how to repair, I give it back. Yes, county work does not make me your unpaid deputy." "Agreed. And if you leave your tools on my side, Marcus, considered, marriage becomes difficult. Marriage becomes educational." He smiled. Dorothea opened the cloth roll she had carried from the boarding house, through the sheriff's office, and back to Mesquite Bend during every stage of the investigation. Her mother's small brass gauge lay inside, worn dull from years of use. She picked it up and placed it near the back edge of the workbench. No ceremony, no permission asked. Her choice. The tool had once meant discipline and caution. Then, it had become the object Marcus learned beside. The thing august, mocked, the measure that never claimed to know more than it could. Now it belonged to a different question. Not whether Dorothea had a place, whether the place allowed her to remain herself. She turned toward Marcus. He was still at the threshold. Dorothea held out her hand. "Come in," Marcus did. 6 weeks later, the first hard frost silvered the shaded side of Mesquite Bend before breakfast. Dorothea was already at the workbench when Marcus came through the tackroom door with his sheriff's revolver in one hand. "Stop there," she said. Marcus stopped. That sounded serious. "Is it loaded?" "No." "Show me." He turned the revolver safely away from both of them, opened the loading gate, and rotated the cylinder chamber by chamber. Empty, everyone. Only then did Dorothea nod toward the bench. Marcus set the revolver on the clean cloth beside her mother's brass gauge and stepped back. 6 weeks earlier, that gesture would have felt like a lesson. Now it felt ordinary. That pleased her more. "What is wrong with it?" she asked. "Cylinder feels rough after I fire." "How rough? Enough that I noticed." "Did you clean it?" Marcus gave her a patient look. Dorothea raised an eyebrow. That was not an answer. "Yes, I cleaned." "Sit." "Properly? I am beginning to regret coming here." "You married badly." "So I have been told." Dorothea picked up the revolver and rotated the cylinder slowly with the loading gate still open. A slight drag. Nothing dramatic. She checked the exposed surfaces, then set the gun down and reached for a cloth. Fouling near the cylinder face, maybe a little grit as well. Dangerous. Not from what I can see. Marcus leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. The bruise from the warehouse was long gone. "You sound disappointed." "I charge less for disappointment." The workbench had changed since day 21, though not enough to stop looking like what it was, a useful corner in a working ranch. A shallow tray held pins and screws. 2 cleaning rods rested along the back. A bottle of oil stood away from the lamp. One drawer contained rags that Marcus had once folded badly, and Dorothea had forbidden him to arrange again. The brass gauge stayed near the window where the light was strongest. Dorothea had taken paid work from neighbors when she wanted it. Cleaning, minor fitting, basic repair, ammunition inspection when storage had been questionable. She had also turned work away. A rancher brought her a rifle with a damaged mechanism beyond what she knew how to repair, and she handed it back without embarrassment. Competence her mother had taught her included knowing where it stopped. Mesquite Bend had changed even less. The same gate still sagged slightly, though Marcus had repaired the worst hinge. The roof no longer leaked near the back room because Dorothea had finally shamed him into fixing it before the late autumn rains. The barn still needed paint. Feed still cost money. Cattle still broke fence when they found sufficient inspiration. Nothing about marriage had transformed the ranch into wealth. Dorothea preferred it that way. Marcus watched her wipe the fouling from the revolver. Hensley stopped by yesterday. Dorothea looked up. How is his hand? Stronger. Cold mornings make it stiff. Doctor still satisfied. So Hensley says. Marcus's mouth moved. He also says you charge too little. Then he is welcome to pay more. I told him that. You are learning. Slowly. Outside the workroom, a ranch hand called to another about a loose shoe. Somewhere near the corral, a horse stamped against frozen ground. Ordinary sounds. Dorothea returned the cloth to its tray. Try it. She handed Marcus the revolver grip first. He tested the cylinder. Better is not finished. Clean it again after your next trip to town. Yes, Mum. Do not use that tone. What tone? The one suggesting obedience has become comedy. Marcus's eyes warmed. I would never. Dorothea reached for a sound cartridge from a small comparison box on the shelf. This one came from the replacement stock. Different supplier, bought last week. She examined it under the window light before touching the brass gauge. Clean case. No staining. Proper seating. She used the gauge only to check fit, then returned the cartridge to its box. Looks ordinary. Marcus took the gauge only after she handed it to him. Even now, he asked with his eyes first. He checked the cartridge the way she had taught him. Then put both back where they belonged. You remember when you told me the tool did not know more than I did? You looked offended. I was wounded. Your recovery has been miraculous. He laughed. The sound carried easily in the small room. Dorothea rested one hand against the bench. Silver City had not forgotten August Sorrel, but the matter no longer owned every morning. After the preliminary local examination on the armed coercion, his case continued into territorial proceedings. The commercial complaints remained separate, supported now by merchant receipts, the clerk's statement, and the tally sheets the deputy had taken from Sorrel's back office. No instant conviction had followed. No single hearing had untangled every loss. But Sorrel's standing with buyers had collapsed. Several merchants refused further stock from him. Others pursued repayment. The unique grey pine crate lid remained in the sheriff's office with the clerk's tally sheets. It had never returned to Mesquite Bend. Dorothea was glad of that. Evidence belonged where it was needed. Memory did not require carrying every object home. Marcus picked up his revolver again, then paused. You know, I can finish cleaning this at the office. I would hope so. Then perhaps I will leave it here until after breakfast. Dorothea glanced at the open loading gate. You are leaving your gun on my bench. Empty. Yes, checked twice. Also yes, and no children live in this house. Correct. I believe the sheriff has considered the risk. Dorothea folded her arms. The sheriff once bought wet ammunition. Marcus winced. Cruel. Accurate. He set the revolver back on the cloth. The loading gate remained open. Dorothea looked at the weapon, then at him. 6 weeks ago, the gun had been part of every question between them. Whether he would lower it, whether she would fire hers, whether skill meant permission, whether trust meant standing close or stepping away. Now the revolver sat empty beside the small brass gauge her mother had used years before, and the most urgent problem in the room was breakfast. The smell of biscuits drifted faintly from the kitchen. Marcus tilted his head. Those may be burning. Then go. You are coming? Dorothea started toward him, then stopped beside the bench. You forgot something. Marcus looked at the revolver. It can wait. I did not mean the gun. He looked back at her. Dorothea reached out and took his empty hand. Marcus's fingers closed around hers easily. No hesitation, no claim. Familiar now. She stepped closer and kissed him, brief, warm, entirely unconnected to danger, apology, or the need to prove anything. Marcus smiled against her mouth before she drew away. What was that for? Nothing. Nothing. I wanted to. His expression softened. Best reason you have given me yet. Dorothea tugged his hand toward the doorway. The biscuits. Right. They left the workroom together. Behind them, the brass gauge caught the cold morning light beside Marcus's unloaded revolver. The loading gate still open. He could have picked up the gun. Instead, he took Dorothea's hand, and the revolver stayed where he had laid it.